So automotive repair always get bad name, and as much as mechanics like myself, shop owners like myself, try our best to do things right, there is always plentiful of people that take all our efforts, throw it down, flush it down the drain, and here we go. This is a 1999 Toyota Camry, and it is actually a pristine 1999 Toyota Camry. One owner car, mother to son car. Unfortunately, the mother passed away and the son inherited the car. Decided to keep it. It's been in the family since it was new, and it really shows. Doesn't have rust, very, very clean, well maintained, or at least that's what they'd hoped. Now the current owner of the car, who is the son, is a lot more mechanically inclined, very capable, does a lot of his work, doesn't have a lot of time, but he knows a lot about cars, more than the average owner. So he went through the service record of this car to see how well the shop that used to maintain this car took care of it. And the problem is, he noticed a few things that he did not like. They replaced the timing belt multiple times, sometimes year after year. That's okay. Maybe they missed it, maybe there was an issue, maybe it was under warranty, whatever the case may be. But he noticed it's been a very long time since the timing belt has not been replaced. So he brought me the car and let's do a timing belt, water pump. You know, the async kit has everything with it, the idler and everything else. I started the job. Very simple job. I've done hundreds, if not thousands of these through my long career at Toyota. In and out, one day, dropped it off in the morning. I was hoping to get it done the same day, call him, tell him the car is ready, business as usual, move on, nothing really exciting. However, that is the exact opposite of what happened because of what I found. Let's pop the hood and let's look under the hood. Now this car is done, we're already done with it. But I want to show you a few things. Of course, this is a 99, still has the hood prop. This beautiful engine is the 1MZ FE, in case you're not familiar with it. It is possibly one of the best engines Toyota made if you take care of it. You might hear bad press about it from the oil sludge problems. Honestly, people just didn't take care of them. Not this one though, because this one is pristine on the inside. You're about to see the inside of this engine in a shape or form. So this job was going great until I pulled one of the idlers. Let's go to the parts collection, with the old parts that came out of this car, pre-surgery, if you would. So this is a standard timing belt job. Nothing really exciting about it. Until I pulled this idler. Now, this idler rides on the belt, or actually the belt rides on it, and this little area is where the timing belt tensioner pushes to keep tension on the belt. Through this hole, there is a big bolt that goes through it. It's basically a through bolt, so you're really not tightening this to the belt, to the where it mounts to. This is free floating like this. But the problem is, once I find it, when I pulled the bolt out, this came out with it. Now, at this point, if you know what this is, you know exactly what happened. This is the thread. This is a piece of aluminum. This is the thread out of where this idler connects to. Now, when I saw this, I'm like, huh, my entire career with Toyota, I've never seen this. Not a big issue. Let's see what happens. I tried to tighten this back, it won't tighten. It just keeps spinning and spinning, because that's it. There's no more thread in that hole. In my entire career, I've never seen this, because nobody over tightens these. Because this is such a vital component. Whenever you're tightening a component that bolts into a block or another component that is very hard to get to, you don't go wailing at it with an impact. Well, the previous shop did. And on top of that, they did it multiple times because they did the timing belt over and over and over in a very short period of time. Then the car just sat for a very long time. So basically, in order to replace where this bolts onto, we moved to the second stage of this surgery. Now it went from a minor doctor visit to a major surgery. Because this happens to bolt on the oil pump right here. This is where that goes. So this bolts on right here, and then the timing belt tensioner goes right here, and this is what keeps tension on the belt. Some of you right now will start saying in the comments, why couldn't we fix this hole instead of replacing this whole oil pump? Now, that was one of the options. And I explored every single option here to do right by the customer here, because this is a very bad situation here, folks. In order to fix this, you cannot rethread aluminum. It's just not going to happen. You can't put a bigger bolt because you're stuck by the size of bolt of this, because you can't make this bigger. If we're doing all this, this is way too much modifications that I'm not comfortable doing, flat out. The only way to fix this is to put a Healy coil. If you're not familiar with that, basically make this hole bigger, put a steel insert that threads into the bigger hole, and the inside of that insert is the correct size where the other one is going to bolt into. The problem is there is not enough room because the crankcase behind it sits right here. There's not really room to drill this hole straight. So you have to remove the oil pump, drill this, put the insert, and hopefully, the helicoil, and hopefully it'll hold. Now, if we're going to remove the oil pump, these oil pumps are not actually expensive, and they're very available. Apparently, in the aftermarket world, this is a common thing. I've never seen it in the dealership world, but apparently this is common because this pump was very available. 2 days, it was here. So if you're going to remove the oil pump, might as well just put a new one. And that's exactly what we did. But folks, this is so unnecessary. It is unbelievable. This should be, according to kind of initial calculations, this should be the second timing belt on this car. Except it is the third or fourth timing belt on this car, completely unnecessarily, because this car only has 106,000 miles. That's fine. Let's look at past that. But then somebody just decided to hammer hand this one and pull the threads out, leading into this giant surgery to replace the oil pump. And the best part is, when I continued the job after all this mess, I pulled suspect number 2, this water pump. Now, just by looking at this water pump, it's aftermarket. That's fine. Some aftermarket parts are made well. That's okay. Except, this is such a cheapo looking water pump. I mean, just by looking at it, I've held so many water pumps in my life. This is such a cheapo looking water pump. Now, the impeller is plastic on the original one, but this just feels such a cheap plastic. And the worst part about it is, wait, is this a paper gasket there? Are we serious right now? Paper gasket on a timing belt driven water pump on a Toyota? Folks, this is not good. I mean, paper gasket, that just tells you the quality. Well, as soon as I see a paper gasket here, we're done. The original one comes with a metal gasket with a rubber insert around it. Comes right out, doesn't read residue, seals very well, doesn't really have problems. But we have a paper gasket. So on top of the shop, ruining this hole, which they could have not known about it. Benefit of the doubt, right? They used the cheapest possible part possible. I really dislike this. The other thing is, one of these tabs, this is a crank pulley. This is where the timing belt rides on at the crank, and this goes right on the crank. One of the tabs was bent. As soon as I touched it, I'm like, wait a second, this is bent. Let me correct it. It just broke. these ribs and this flat spot, this is where the crank sensor gets the signal. Whenever you get this, you're top dead center. Then it rotates, picking up these, and this is how you pick up misfires. When this tooth is missing, you could have all kinds of problems. And when this thing is bent, not good as well, because you're gonna have a weak signal there. I don't know how this never set a code, but it didn't. So we also replaced it. This guy was very inexpensive, so thank God there. I mean, here's the timing belt, which it's not original. I'm trying to find what brand it is. It's long gone, even though it's timing belt. There we go. Doesn't even say a brand on it. Nothing. So I don't even know what this brand this is. And it's in good shape, but I'm glad we got this guy out because this water pump just looks terrible. I mean, this whole job, and we also replaced this other idler, which I believe this, just by the looks of it and by the looks of this guy is very aftermarket. This is not a coil bearing, but this one is a coil bearing. So I wonder, did they not replace this? Is this original and this is aftermarket? And just by looking at them, this one is all rusty on the inside and this one is not. Oh well. At this point, when I start seeing things like that, I just lose all trust and hope. And I don't blame you if you are in this situation. This is terrible. Now, I told you we were going to see the inside of the engine-ish. This is the inside of the engine. Doesn't look too terrible. Remember, this is a very old car. So this is not terrible. We replaced the oil pump. But then there is more, because it's not as simple as that. Let's go back to the car and just kind of tell you what's involved here. Now, I charge right around 4.5 hours for the timing belt. That's standard in the industry with the cam seals and crank seals and all that stuff. Now, what we had to do this job is, in addition to removing the timing belt, remove the alternator, remove the compressor, remove the front pipe, the exhaust, remove the oil pan, remove the upper oil pan to get access to the oil pump, which sits right behind the crank pulley. It's just driven by the crank pulley. I'll show you some videos as we go. It's really hard to show you when the car is completed, but I did all that. I really didn't know what to charge this customer because I feel bad for him. I mean, this is such a nice car, but this is a problem that you can't just glance over. You can't just, oh, let's helicoil it, whatever, and let's just glue it together. That's what drives the timing belt. That falls off. If it doesn't damage a lot of stuff, the car is just going to shut off in the middle of the highway. That's a safety concern. I can't, with good conscience, just let this car go like that. We have to make it right. And if we're going to spend the money, let's fix it 100%. And that's what we did. It's done, runs great. There is no issues with it anymore, but I'm just still staggered. Why does the automotive business get its bad name? This is why. Cheap parts, not good labor practices. Everybody's in a hurry. Let's go. Let's get everything out the door. Why the rush? Every good mechanic can get this timing belt without rushing in less than the labor time. That's the truth. And we're not going to adjust the labor time because that is a fair time. Because one complication, and you're way over that time. And that's how the automotive business works. But why rush? You have 4 hours to do this job. If you get it done in 3 hours, good for you. If you get it done in 2, why the rush to get it done in 45 and just hammer everything and just slap it together and let's get it out? That's what happens in automotive repair. And that's how we arrive at this situation. I ended up charging this customer 2 hours of additional labor because I pretty much spend the whole day on this, but at this point, we're trying to get the car back together, we're trying to get him back on the road, and he's already taken a hit buying that, the delay to get the parts and all that. So this is kind of, we're no longer about business, this is just about doing right by the customer, getting him out of here, and that's what will end up happening. And on top of that, there is more. This is a gift that keeps giving. The front pipe's been replaced. An aftermarket one, super common on these for the exhaust to leak. Something else that whoever decided to do the exhaust left me a little gift. So underneath the car, there is a bracket that holds the exhaust. And then that bracket is bolted to the sub-pan or the secondary oil pan. So in order to remove the secondary oil pan, you need to remove the bracket. In order to remove the bracket, you need to remove the exhaust. It's just layered like that. So I get the exhaust loose, try to pull it out, it won't come off because the guy that put the exhaust welded the exhaust to the bracket. In order to remove the exhaust, you have to pull the bracket. But in order to remove the bracket, you have to remove the exhaust because the bolts are literally behind it. So there was 2 hours of fighting to cut that little weld without damaging more stuff, because now you're cutting right next to the sub-pan. That was not fun. This day that I got this car done, I needed everybody to be out of the shop and kind of no phone, no interruptions. I started working on it at 5 o'clock when everybody left. I was done at midnight. Midnight, folks. This is how long this took. I am not an amateur mechanic. I've been doing this for a long time. This is just a massive job. And fighting that front exhaust was not fun. This just was not a good job. No technician wants this to happen. But the problem is, neither does the customer. And the more important problem of this, and the whole idea of this video is, if you don't trust your mechanic, if there is any red flags about them, the parts they use, the way they do things, how fast this car was done, question it. Ask for your old parts. Ask for the new parts. I see people ask me all the time, how do I know if the mechanic is good? The mechanic is only as good as the quality of the parts they're using. When it's something like this, you're replacing a timing belt and water pump, there's not really any diagnosis or anything. And then when it comes to diagnosis, the mechanic is only as good as the equipment and training that they have. That's the bottom line. Do they understand how this car works to begin with, or how this component works before they start diagnosing a problem? Do they know what's normal and what's not? This is the rudimentary basics of diagnosis. If you don't know how something works, how are you going to fix it? You can't. And this takes us to the point of this video. Be careful with your mechanics, folks. Those that don't work on their own car, I encourage you to work on your own car, at least the simple stuff. You're not going to be pulling engines and transmissions, but do the basic maintenance. Learn how to do it. If you don't want to do it, at least know how to do it. Understand what's going on with the car. It takes you 5 minutes to look underneath a car to see an original filter, original parts. Did you choose these parts? That's the other thing. I see so many shops, their search for parts is about which part can we make most profit out of, not what's good for the car and the customer. There are aftermarket parts that are good. They're expensive. If you are in doubt, you don't know, buy original. That's what your car came with. Especially when you're replacing an original part that failed after 15 years, guess what? If you replace it with another original part, expect it to last 15 years. But if you replace it with an aftermarket, it's not going to last as much, potentially. But if the price is half, maybe it's good. It'll last half the time, but it costs us. So we go back to the same thing. You gotta be informed about your car's repair. What parts are you using? Who's the mechanic working on it? How did they arrive at this diagnosis? What qualifications they have? Folks, everybody that can hold a wrench can call themselves a mechanic, but really, once you're wrenching on customer cars, having cars be on the road for hundreds of thousands of miles and years without issues, is when you really start knowing how it is to work on customer cars in the automotive industry. Otherwise, everybody can change an alternator, everybody can do all this, but it's when things go south, how do you point them back north and make it right for the customers? Folks, before we wrap up this video, let's take a quick tour of this beautiful car, because we just can't move on without looking at how beautiful this thing is. And just look at this interior. So clean, so taken care of. What a shame that we're having to deal with this major surgery on a car that is this clean. Really been well kept, well taken care of. Paint is great. Everything looks great on this car. The owner cares. He does simple stuff on himself. He knows about cars, but unfortunately, this is how he got this car, and he's kind of dealing with the aftermath of what others have done to it. Folks, I hope this video was helpful, informative. I hope you learned something new. And until the next video, folks, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and you have yourself a wonderful day.